Okay, and how do you respond to Ambassador Foley's claim, shared by all the people who signed the memo, that the ban is a betrayal of American values?
The ambassador is certainly entitled to his opinion on that. There are many, obviously it's very clear that this policy has many opponents, but fundamentally it's designed to try to keep the United States safe.
All right, that clip was just a preview of what's coming next. This is a full congressional hearing, and you just saw Ilhan Omar questioning Mr. Edward Ramatowski from the State Department. What follows is a strong example of how someone handles intense political pressure. Ramatowski is a longtime public servant with decades of experience. Not a politician, but a career professional. He's being questioned in a way that seems aimed at drawing out criticism of his own department, colleagues, or leadership, and he stays focused. As you watch the full exchange, pay attention not just to what he says, but how he says it. He sticks to explaining legal processes and how policies are implemented, while the questioning leans on quotes and accounts from former officials to try to create a gotcha moment. It's a detailed back-and-forth exchange that really shows how these hearings play out in real time. Share your thoughts as you watch. Does he handle the pressure effectively? And if you enjoy this kind of straightforward political breakdown, consider liking and subscribing. Now, let's get into the full video.
That would be atypical, I think.
Atypical. Has it been typical for policy to drive several SOs to publicly resign in protest?
There have been Foreign Service officers who've resigned in the past over various policies. That's true.
In June of 2017, between the second and the third version of the Muslim ban, more than 100 diplomats signed a dissent memo that said, quote, banning travelers from these 7 countries calls back to some of the worst times in our history. Former consular officer Christopher Richards, who resigned in protest of the Muslim ban, said in an op-ed that the consular officers were not able to issue waivers on their own, that they had to get approval from the State Department. Would that be you? Do you give that approval?
No, that's not correct. The consular officers make the decision on the first 2 prongs of the waiver, national interest and undue hardship, and then the interagency security review provides the guidance on the security prong.
So that's not a decision you get to make,
no.
Or is the White House involved in that decision?
Not at all.
Okay. Sarah Gartner, another former FSO who resigned in protest over the Muslim ban, told CNN that fellow officers, quote, felt pressure to approve as few folks as possible for the waiver. She also said that the Muslim ban had been, quote, reworked and sanitized by layers of bureaucracy with people distracted by the next terrible thing. It can be easy to forget it's even happening. Well, it looks like Congress hasn't forgotten. And Madam Chair, I have assigned testimony from 4 former FSOs that I would like to enter into record.
It's put into the record by unanimous consent.
Thank you. Ambassador John Foley, who quit his post as ambassador to Panama in 2018, said he could no longer represent President Trump and still hold true to the value that make this country great. Among the policies he listed was the Muslim ban. In the end, how many diplomats and consular officers signed the dissent memo protesting the ban?
I don't have an exact number for you, Congresswoman. I know that some did.
Will you be able to get us that number?
I can't guess that number, no.
How do you respond to his claim that the consular officers have to get clear waivers with your office?
I would say, as I said before, that that's not correct. The consular officers make the determination on the first 2 prongs of the waiver, national interest and undue hardship. And the security check, as I testified, is conducted back here in Washington. Now, if a consular officer is...
So you're saying his claim is false?
Which claim? That Washington is making the decisions?
Yes.
Yes, that's not correct.
And how do you respond to Ms. Gartner's claim that the officers are implicitly or explicitly pressured to deny waivers?
We are not implicitly or explicitly pressuring anyone to act in any way contrary to the law.
Okay. And how do you respond to Ambassador Foley's claim, shared by all the people who signed the memo, that the ban is a betrayal of American values?
The ambassador is certainly entitled to his opinion on that. There are many, obviously it's very clear that this policy has many opponents, but fundamentally it's designed to try to keep the United States safe.
And to our other two panelists, was Stephen Miller's role in formulating the 3 reiterations of the Muslim ban? What was his role?
I'm not aware of any role played by Stephen Miller.
And Ms. Newman?
I was not at the department in January. I did not start until late February.
Okay. And what instructions were DHS and state given from the White House as how to implement the Muslim ban?
I wasn't given any instruction from the White House.
Again, ma'am, I was not at the department in January 2017.
The department was not consulted about the first executive order.
All right, let's skip the play-by-play and get straight to the analysis. What just happened was a high-pressure political exchange, and the person in the hot seat didn't crack. This moment highlighted the contrast between professional composure and political performance. From the outset, Ilhan Omar came prepared with a clear narrative relying on quotes, prior statements, and accounts from individuals who had left their positions. The line of questioning leaned heavily on second-hand claims, setting up a confrontational tone. In response, Mr. Ramatosky stayed measured and focused. When challenged on the waiver process, he calmly corrected the record, explaining how decisions are actually made and pushing back on the idea that he was a bottleneck. Rather than getting drawn into the framing of the question, he stuck to clarifying procedures and responsibilities. On the issue of alleged pressure, the questioning pointed to how someone felt. Instead of debating personal perceptions, he responded with a firm statement about policy, emphasizing that no one is directed to act outside the law. It was a shift from emotion-based claims to institutional standards and rules. The most strategic moment came with the question about betraying American values. That kind of framing can force a difficult choice: agree and risk backlash, or disagree and face criticism. He avoided that trap by acknowledging differing opinions and redirecting the focus to the purpose of the policy, which he framed as national security. Throughout the exchange, he maintained a consistent approach: stick to facts, avoid speculation, and keep the discussion centered on policy rather than politics. While the questioning aimed to create a defining moment, the response remained grounded in process and professional responsibility. In the end, it became a contrast between two styles, one focused on building a narrative, the other on defending procedures and facts.